I'll introduce you to a theme which is called soft power in international politics, and you must have heard this concept of soft power. Uh, the soft power, is the way it's understood in international politics and the way it is defined. What are the features of soft power? Why people call it soft power when there is already hard power? What are the differences between hard power and soft power? What are the theories on soft power? And what are the uses of soft power for international politics or in the making of the foreign policy of a state? So I thought it's important for you as an undergraduate or a postgraduate student to understand the various dimensions of soft power in international politics. When when you talk of power, it's important to understand how do you define power. Power can be defined as the ability of an individual or ability of the state to get things done by the other state, or for individual get things done by other individual. So your ability to get things done is the basic ingredient or basic defining basic core of any power, the way you define power. So similarly, the power in international politics can be divided into two parts. One is the hard power, and the other is soft power. The way we understand soft power, it is always understood in terms of in comparison with the hard power, because you need to distinguish the soft power with the hard power. So that contest and the dichotomy or the distinction between hard power and soft power is important to understand. And I'll start with this concept of hard power first, because you need to understand what is hard power. Only then you can understand the concept of soft power in international politics. I think this is pretty clear, and you must be knowing that there are certain basic components of hard power. Hard power of any state can be understood as this military and the defense capability of a state. The power of a country, the way we define, or the way the scholars of international politics define power in international politics, when they use power, mostly they use in the context of hard power. And when they refer to hard power, they basically refer to some of the basic things or the basic features of some of the core elements of power. One is military and defense, as I told you. So military is very important, because by military you say that some country is very powerful and the other country is not so powerful. And the second feature is the economic power. When you explain, or when you say that there is a country, for instance Japan or Germany, they are powerful than the other states, so they are powerful because of the economic resources or the economic development that have taken place in those states. So military and defense is one, economic power is second. The size of territory, that is also important constituent of the power of any country. If the size of a state is very small, that state is likely to be not so powerful. You have a country like Fiji, for instance, you have a country like Guyana, you have a country like Maldives, you have countries like Bhutan, which are very small in size. They are small in size. As a result, the resources are very limited. As a result, the population is very less, so they cannot play a very powerful role or very influential role in international politics. So size also matters, as the population matters. Apart from all these, one other constituent of hard power would be the stability of the government, because you need some kind of policy continuity. If the country is not having stable politics, if the country is going through a turmoil, or if the country is passing through a difficult phase of destabilization, so in that case it's very difficult for the country to exert power in the international system. So stability of political stability is important for the consistency of the policy making of the state. So as a result, these are the broader features of hard power, what we call the power. Broadly is used many times just as power, but since we are distinguishing between the hard power and the soft power, it's important to understand the exclusive elements of hard power, and then we'll come back to the concept of soft power and the important elements or the aspects of soft power. So militarily, if I have to explain you today, if I need to tell you the hierarchy, the way the way the international system is structured in terms of military power. So the first important country is the United States. As you know, that United States is the most important country in terms of military power. America is the most powerful country in terms of its military, in terms of military spending, in terms of the technology that it uses, in terms of the presence of its military in various parts of the world, also in terms of the alliances, military alliances that it has created in collaboration with the European states in the form of NATO. So that makes United States the superpower, what you call it, superpower. In the earlier times, Soviet Union was the superpower, and Soviet Union, there was always a contest between the Soviet Union and United States in terms of balance of power, that each country was trying to balance the other country. But after the decline of the Soviet Union in 1991, this America remained the sole superpower in the international system. And if you take the military spending as one of the features of the power of a country, so US is spending nearly $650 billion for military, and that $650 billion is equal to the military spending of all the countries put together. The second country in terms of military spending in today's time would be China. China is spending nearly $130 billion for the military. India is spending quite a lot, and India is also spending nearly $40 billion now, more than $35 billion actually. So in terms of its military spending. But apart from military spending, what is also important is the presence of military that you have in the various parts of the world. And today, America is the only country which has its bases in various parts of the world. It has its base in Europe. It has its NATO force is there. It has its base in Japan. There also the Japanese security is controlled by United States. It has its base in Indian Ocean, and you might be knowing this. What is known as the island Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia is an island where there is an American base, and India, sometimes India has said that the American base should not be in the Diego Garcia. So the America has its military presence all over the world, and it has the capability to strike. It has capability to strike any country because its bases are spread all over the world. So in terms of military, as I told you, US is, and in terms of economy also, US is the most important country. US is the superpower. China is number 2 in terms of military. Then you have Russia. Russia. The military technology is very, very developed in Russia. Russia is the only country which can counter United States in terms of military equipments or the nuclear technology that it has. In terms of technology, is much ahead of China. And in fact, China and India are the 2 countries which are importing most of the weapons and the defense system from Russia. And in terms of military spending, China is second, but in terms of technology, Russia would be second, because Russian military technology is very, very advanced. After that, you have countries like India, which is spending quite a lot, but in India, the technology is not indigenous. As you know that, India is the biggest importer of arms in the world today, and India is importing from countries like Russia. Russia is the main supplier of arms and weapons to India, and apart from Russia, there are other countries like now France, Israel. United States has become as the biggest exporter in the last year. So these are the countries which are exporting the weapons or the fighter aircrafts and other tanks and all to India. So India is also very important now, getting important in terms of military power. Then you have countries which are economic powerhouses like Germany and Japan. Germany and Japan, they have this very powerful economy, but they do not have independent military since the World War II period. So and that the security is even now controlled by United States. So as a result, they're economic power, but they do not have the military power. So now the important thing to understand that hard power has 2 important elements. One is it has the capability to coerce. If the United States does not, if the United States, for instance, wants to get things done from another state, even if the other state is not willing, it can actually attack, or it intervenes in the policy of the state, and that is a very coercive method of getting things done. The way United States did in Iraq, the way it did in Afghanistan, the way it is, the kind of role it's playing in Libya, Syria at the moment. So it's a very coercive method of exerting the hard power for getting things done, or to bringing bring the policy of that state in favor of its own policy. Apart from coercion, there is another element through which these countries they exercise power. The second is through payment. So it's a kind of buying the other country, buying the other state by making some payment. For instance, the Pakistan. In the case of Pakistan, you always you always hear that United States is paying some aid or grants to Pakistan, so that Pakistani military does not attack the establishment in Afghanistan, American military establishment in Afghanistan. It also pays Pakistan, the Pakistani military also. It provides technology and the other kind of aids to Pakistani state and the military, basically so that the Pakistani army or the state does not support Taliban. So these are other methods of making the policy of the other state favorable to its own state or favorable to the policy of the state. So coercion is one method, as in the case of Iraq and Afghanistan, Syria, and payment is another method of aligning the policy of the other state with the own state. So these are the two methods of used for aligning the policy of the state by the powerful state. Now, what is the soft power? We understood the soft power and we understood the hard power, but now we need to contrast that with the soft power. The concept of soft power was given by the Harvard professor, political scientist Joseph Nye in 1990, and he defined it as the ability of the state to attract and co-opt rather than coerce or use of force or money to achieve power. So in the hard power, the coercion was important element. The forcing or the coercion or the paying money to get things done. So that was the method used for the hard power. But here is the ability to attract and co-opt. So you basically you have certain features or you have certain elements which are attractive. And that becomes persuasive for the other state to follow you. So it's not the coercion here. In soft power, you do not have the coercion. You don't use military or you do not use the financial power to get things done. It's the ability to influence the behavior without threat or payment. Many of its components are actually, many of the components of soft power are actually outside the domain of the government. Hard power is controlled by and large by the government, but many of the components of soft power are actually outside the domain of the government. They are not decided by the government. They are not controlled by the government. It shapes the social environment for policy, and it has enabling and disabling effect. So it will it will persuade the state to follow certain norms or certain values, certain rules, and it also it will deter the state from having a policy which is aggressive or following or having a policy which goes against the basic value of the other state. So it has enabling and disabling effect. So here the difference between the hard power and the soft power is that hard power is all about coercion. Hard power is all about pressurizing the other state to get things done. Soft power here would be something which there are certain elements which become attractive to the other state. So and that is the basic difference between the hard power and the soft power. And in 2003, Joseph Nye gave a new concept called a smart power. So it's not just the hard power, it's not the soft power. What a state needs in the making of its foreign policy or in the making of its policy towards other state, what the state needs according to Joseph Nye is the smart power. Smart power is basically the combination or the aggregation of hard power as well as the soft power. So it has the elements of coercion and payment, but it also has an element of attraction. So what smart power tells you that your hard power is not enough. You have to have the soft power, but your soft power is also not enough, because in the absence of hard power, soft power would be taken as a sign of weakness. So then with this, he gave this concept of what is known in the literature of international politics as the smart power. Soft power is more effective than coercion. That's the argument given by Joseph Nye. And values like democracy, human rights, individual rights, and they are much more seductive than the imposition of democracy by the by the powerful state. What it tells you that there are certain features of certain features which can be attractive to the other state, and other states follow not because of any pressure, not because of any external persuasion or pressure, because the other state feels that these are the values which are good for their own state. So it becomes very attractive and seductive for the states, like the values of democracy, the value of individual rights, the values of human rights. These are some of the elements which are very attractive to other states. Soft power is not it's not about idealism, or it's not about liberalism. It is simply the form of power for getting the outcome. So also please understand that when the realists define that the international politics or international system is all about the struggle of power, so the person when you talk of the soft power is not about the liberalism or idealism. It's actually the component of hard power. That's the way Joseph Nye has defined it. So that is component of power, and power understood differently by in terms of some tangent or some, in terms of normative structure that is there in the international system, or the normative values which become attractive to the other state. Soft power is descriptive rather than normative concept. Soft power can be used. Also, please understand that it's not that soft power is a harmless kind of concept. Soft power can be used for nefarious purposes. For instance, all the dictators like Hitler, Stalin, or Mao, they all possess soft power. The state during that period, they also promoted soft power, and they also possessed soft power. It's not higher than the hard power, or it's not. You cannot say that soft power is better than the other power. It only tells you that there are certain cultural or the value system, or there are certain policies which are adopted by willingness. The states voluntarily adopt those features because they find that these values are useful for their own state. So that is the beauty, that is the seductive part of the soft power, or the values of the soft power. Now, what are because soft power concept emerged in the context of the United States, where Joseph Nye concept basically it tried to explain the soft power of United States, and he argued that how the American soft power was declining. And when he was giving the theory in 1990, many of the people argued that America was in decline. So, but he argued that American soft power is in decline. Is in decline. But the American power as a whole continued to dominate the world system, not just because of the hard power, but also because of the soft power that it has. For instance, the American system of democracy, the freedom and the rule of law, which is promoted by America, which is followed by America, and it is also followed by the other state. The Republican and the Democratic form of the government, which is there in US and which is followed by the states, and its openness to immigrants of all races and regions. So it is open to American system, although this is the argument given by Joseph Nye, but it's not open to all the immigrants of all the races. It has the visa regime, which is quite restrictive, but still, since it allows many of the migrants to come and settle down there, so that again is one of the attractions of United States. And many of the Indians also, for instance, there are nearly 3 million Indians who live there, so they find that the state to be very attractive in terms of employment, in terms of the culture that it has. So that is the seductive part of the soft power. That is the reason why people would like to go and settle in that state, and that is the uniqueness of America, which is more like in terms of Shashi Tharoor, as he tells it, it's more like a melting pot that where people from all the cultures and all the nationalities, they come and live together, they melt together, and they become a part of this American exceptionalism. They're part of American culture, and they share the dream of what is known as the American dream, to rise with the hard work and competition. And the fact that America is the most important country in today's international system, that is also very attractive to other states. So, and as a result, the other states and the people of other states, they find America very attractive. So these are some of the features of American uniqueness or American exceptionalism, but that the idea of exceptionalism or the broader parameter of exceptionalism can be used for any state. Every state is unique in one way or the other. So it's nothing about the particular, there's nothing exceptional about American exceptionalism. Every state is exceptional in one way or the other. Every state has certain cultures or certain features which are different from the other state. So that the idea of exceptionalism can be applied to other states as well. Now, what are the examples of this American soft power? Boeing and Intel, for instance, they're all American. All the flights that you see, most of the flights, Boeing, GE, and most of the computers, the manufacturing in the initial years, it was done by the Intel. Then if you talk of McDonald's and KFC, the eating joints, they are American, and now they are there in every part of the world, every important city of the world. Then you have the Apple iPad phone, which is very popular throughout the world, and you have MTV and the Hollywood movies. The Hollywood movie is popular throughout the world, whether you go to Russia, whether you go to even the places where the Hollywood is not liked, even in the places where people are extremely critical of Hollywood movies because of the violence, excessive violence, because of the excessive sex. Even in those states, the American Hollywood movies are very popular. In fact, it is said that just before the 9/11 attack, the attackers or the militants, they actually had the food in McDonald's. They had burgers there, and then they went for this attack of this hijacking the plane and then going to the attack. Then you have the CNN and the Voice of America. Voice of America is the radio news broadcast by the American state. Then you have the CNN, which is CNN, the Fox News, and the other news channels, which are the American news channels, which are popular throughout the world, because they have the resources, they have the international reach, and they have the satellites through which they can telecast these programs. So CNN is very popular throughout the world, and as a result, they decide the agenda of the news, they control the content of the news. So through that, even CNN is not controlled by the state, but CNN follows some of the basic premises of the state. Some of the basic the broader framework is, again, it follows some of the agendas of the state. So software emerges as these examples tell you. The Boeing, Intel, all these are private companies, including CNN is a private company. So the software emerges without government. So they have established the broader they established the huge soft power for the American state in other parts of the world. So, and they are not done by the state deliberately or directly, but they indirectly play a role in creating the image of America in the other parts of the world. And but at times, the state also promotes soft power. For instance, even the state of America, they'll have the scholarships for the foreign citizens or the students of the other countries. For instance, you have the Fulbright scholarship. They have the cultural exchange program with various universities, where they promote the exchange of ideas, exchange of scholars from one country to their own country. So these are also there are some of the elements of soft power are state controlled, but some of the elements of state power, some of the elements of soft power are also controlled. Are actually they are not controlled by the state. They are operational because of the other players, which are non-state players. Whether it can be NGOs, it can be multinational companies, or it can be some of the private companies like news channels and the Hollywood movies. Now, because we live in India, it's also important to understand what are the elements of soft power for India, and we should not be narrow in defining the soft power here. And in the broader inclusive, if you see the soft power of India, traditionally and historically, India had a very huge the capital of soft power. India, starting from the historical period, if I take you, the Indian civilization, the way it has spread in various parts of the world, so that is again one of the elements of soft power. When Buddhism started traveling from India to other parts of the world, and I'm talking the period of Ashoka, when he started sending the Buddhist monks, sent his daughter and the other people to various parts of Sri Lanka, to southern part of India, to Tibet, and then it traveled later to Southeast Asian states also. So Buddhism started traveling to other parts of the world, and later on it went to China, it went up till Japan. So the Buddhism as a religion, or Buddhism as a philosophy, it was not because of the state power. It didn't go to Sri Lanka or other parts of because of the state power. The Buddhist monks were not a powerful people. They were not like military crusaders who were trying to convert people. Basically, they were trying to promote some of the ideas of Buddhism. They were trying to promote the basic philosophy of Buddhism, and which was attractive to other people because they found some kind of they found this religion to be very rational. They found this religion to be very attractive. As a result, the many of the people which were either pagan or the tribal people in Sri Lanka or Southeast Asia or China or Tibet, so they converted to Buddhism. They liked the philosophy of Buddhism. So the soft power in India, if I see, that started from the Buddhist period. And after that, if I start from that historical period to, if I come to the period of Gandhi, so the elements that we have learned from that soft power, like the notion of tolerance, the non-violence, and the struggle against injustice. So these are some of the basic things which were promoted right from Buddhist period till Gandhi's time. So the tolerance, non-violence, that came to be associated with Buddhism, Gandhi, and that also became an integral part of India. So as a result, when you go and travel outside, so you'll find that India is identified with a culture of tolerance, a culture of non-violence, a culture. Indians are supposed to be very spiritual. Many of the people very ironically believe that Indians will not be fighting because they are non-violent people. They believe that if you go outside and if you travel to one of the countries in Europe, they believe that most of the Indians will be doing, since they are very spiritual, most of the Indians will be practicing yoga. So these are some of the way the image of India is there, the way the way India is understood, India as a culture, as a nation, the way is there in the imagination of people in other parts of the world. So so that is the historical part of this, the Indian soft power. But during the colonial struggle, as you know that Gandhi was the most important leader of the anti-colonial movement. So Gandhi promoted this idea of the mobilization of people through non-violent methods. So basically, he was trying to fight against the Britishers. British were the hard power, and Gandhi was using the soft power of mobilizing people through non-violence, mobilizing people on the concept of satyagraha. So through that, you can see the clear contest between the hard power and the soft power. The British were very repressive. British were using the military methods to control any kind of mobilization or any kind of protest by Gandhi and his people. So, and Gandhi was using the soft power. The Gandhi was promoting the idea of mobilizing the people against a very powerful military state, against the very powerful military force through the soft power of non-violence, soft power of satyagraha, soft power of Gandhi. So these were the elements of Gandhi's soft power. So that is how you see that the way the Indian soft power is emerging, and understand that this soft power, the struggle of Gandhi's struggle against colonialism, that has a huge impact throughout the world, especially in the colonial countries, where whether I talk of Nkrumah in Ghana and many parts of the South Africa, and in other parts of the world, in Yugoslavia and other parts, they adopted this non-violent method of protest. And in Southeast Asian states also, so where Gandhi's idea of mobilization through non-violent method, that was the soft power that was adopted by many of the other states against their colonial rulers. So what we see is that India was very rich in terms of the element and the component or the what we call soft power in international politics. India, in fact, in the colonial period or after the struggle of the colonial period, India was one of the champions of soft power, and that soft power, India was accepted as one of the leaders of one of the leaders who the country which propounded some ethics and morality in international politics. It stood for the non-militarization of the state. It also in the initial years, it also asked other states, the nuclear states, to denuclearize, to non-proliferation. It supported the idea of non-proliferation and non-testing of the nuclear weapons, although it was not accepted by most of the states. But the fact that India assumed the leadership of the third world countries, so that was also the soft, that was contributed, or that happened because of the soft power of India, where India was accepted as the leader of the third world countries. So that's how you understand the importance of soft power in international politics. Indian democracy, the fact that that India remained democracy while most of the post-colonial states, whether it's the African states or even countries like Pakistan or Indonesia, so the countries which emerged from the colonies, they very soon they became the dictatorial states. They could not remain democracy. But India, very strangely or ironically, though it was predicted by many of the philosophers that India will not remain, India will not survive as a nation, or India will not remain democratic, India remained a democracy. And that's the beauty of this Indian soft power, or that the notion that India is a democracy, despite all the weaknesses, despite all the poverty or the unemployment or the other social problems that we have it here. India remained plural, India remained secular, and India remained democratic. So that is the soft ingredients of India's power. So these are the components of India's soft power. So diversity, pluralism, autonomy, these are some of the features, political features of India's soft power. Now coming to the non-political features of soft power. So one is yoga. Yoga is very popular throughout the world. Yoga is equated with India, and as I told you that if you travel to one of the European states, they would be thinking the moment they see India, the kind of image that they have, that number one, that Indian would be very spiritual. Second, they might be thinking that Indian, as an Indian, you must be practicing yoga. And the third, they'll think that you might be a software engineer. Software, there also soft comes, but although it does not include, it does not come into the soft power. But the notion that India has, the image that an Indian carries, because when an Indian travels to other parts of the world, the image that it carries is that of a software engineer, or the yoga teacher, or very spiritual. So, or very religious. Sometimes people think that the Indians are very religious also. So that is the kind of image that India has India has, and when Indians travel, they also carry that image with them. So yoga is again very popular, and yoga now is popular in the Western countries, and they realize that yoga is very important for the unity of thought and mind, or unity of body and the mind. So for that, yoga is practiced by many of the European people also now, and there are various forms of yoga. And now some of the forms of yoga are so distinct that it's very difficult to actually identify with the traditional yoga that you have. And there are certain. India is the only country where you have university for yoga. In Bihar, there is a place called Munger where there is a university for yoga. And very recently, the Modi government elected one minister who would be yoga minister. So that is the way India is promoting this soft power, or India is promoting the notion of yoga. When Prime Minister Modi gave the speech in the General Assembly during his September visit to the United States, so he said that he requested the other states to celebrate one day as the yoga day. And that actually materialized, and now I think it's 21st June. One of the days is celebrated as the Yoga Day by the United Nations and throughout the world. And next, which is very important for Indian soft power, that is the Bollywood. You probably won't imagine the impact the Bollywood has in throughout the world. Now Bollywood is not just popular among the Indian diaspora who are living in the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, or other parts of the world. Indian films, Indian movies, Indian songs, they are very popular in many parts of the world, and they are popular also among the non-diasporic population in those countries. In fact, if you travel to Turkey, countries like Turkey, Syria, Egypt, these Indian actors, for instance, Shah Rukh Khan, Amitabh Bachchan, Salman Khan, they are very popular. And since Indian films or Indian soap operas, they promote family value, they promote the value of marriage, they promote the value of loyalty and commitment to your family, to your wife. So they are very much liked by the people in these countries, especially in the Islamic states of Iraq, Syria, Pakistan, Afghanistan. These kind of this collective value system is very is liked by these people. So the actors, the actors are very popular in these states, and Bollywood is having a huge business outside in the other countries. So Bollywood has become one of the important constituents of India's soft power. Then in the soft power, you also have the cuisine and the Indian food, for instance, Indian cuisine, then like the chicken curry. So the concept of curry is identified with Indian. It is said that the chicken tikka curry actually, the chicken tikka curry is when one of the restaurants in the UK, they used to serve chicken tikka. But when one white went to that restaurant, he asked that he wanted to have the curry, because he always thought of India with the curry. So he said that in the chicken tikka cannot be curry. But what it is that he put some sauce in that, and that became chicken curry. So some of the I've heard, I don't know the real origin of that, but Sasi Tharoor has quoted, and many other people have quoted, that the chicken tikka masala actually originated in Britain, but it has this Indian connotation or Indian origin. So what I'm trying to tell you is that many of the Indian foods are very popular in other parts of the world. And the curry, the concept of curry is curry and various spices and various kind of foods. They are now even if you go to smaller countries like Estonia, Finland, and other places, they are there. There are a number of Indian restaurants which are carrying the Indian cuisine in other parts of the world. So that is again one of the elements of India's soft power. Then you have the culture. And the culture, whether it's the Hindu culture or the Buddhist culture or the composite culture which India has, the secular culture that it has. So those are also the elements of India's soft power. And now you have the agency of ICSSR, Indian Council of Cultural, ICCR, which promotes the Indian culture in the other parts of the world. So these are some of the elements of India's soft power in international politics. And the diversity and the composite culture that we have, that is again very interesting to other people in the world. There was a time just before this, the BJP government, there was a time when the Prime Minister was a Sikh, the President was a Muslim, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was a Sikh, the President Abdul Kalam was a Muslim, and the leader of the ruling party was Sonia Gandhi, who was a Catholic Christian in a country which is where the majority of the people are Hindu. So that is the beauty and that is the diversity of India, and that diversity is very attractive to other people in the world. So the kind of composite culture that has emerged in India, the kind of secular composite culture that has emerged in India, so that is again an important element that is very seductive to many of the parts of the world. Despite the ethnic and linguistic divisions and the religious diversity that we have, the fact that India has survived as a successful country, so that is the soft power, and that is very seductive and attractive to the people throughout the world. Nehru also promoted a non-alignment movement, which can be taken as some of the elements can be taken as soft power. The concept of Panchashil, for instance, that could be taken as the element of soft power. Then anti-colonial solidarity, so that which was established by Nehru. So all of that established India's soft power during the Nehru period, and that promoted the role and the image of India in the other parts of the world. India's cricket diplomacy, then the Vajpayee's Lahore bus diplomacy, then the Prime Minister Modi's linking with the diaspora, then the neighborhood first policy. These are some of the broader elements of India's soft power. So the soft power varies from the political culture to the real culture, and to the even food culture, which can be biryani or the chicken curry. So these are some of the elements of India's. So religious tolerance religious tolerance is again one of the important aspects of India's soft power. And the fact that now some of the unfortunate thing is that some of the some of the minority institutions who are attacked by the fringes of a particular culture. So that is kind of damaging the soft power of India in Islamic world. That is also damaging the soft power of India in the Christian world. Now, what are the important elements of the Prime Minister Modi's soft power? One is the connecting with the diaspora, especially the persons of Indian origin. Then he also talks of the promotion of democracy and all, and he talks of history and culture. So the historical aspect and the cultural aspect, so they are also the important part of India's soft power. Then he promoted yoga. As I told you that he appointed a minister, and June 21 is now celebrated as the International Day of Yoga. And so these are the things which are being promoted by the Modi's government to soft power. Now, briefly, I'll also tell you that every country promotes a soft power, and every country has a certain seductive or attractive element. So similarly, in the case of China, Chinese culture is now is having its impact in various parts of the world. In Southeast Asia, it has an impact. It has impact in East Asia. It also has impact now in Africa. So China is also very strongly promoting soft power in other parts of the world, from Confucianism to egalitarian communism. So China is promoting that kind of soft power. We have institutes which are Confucian Institute, which are established in various parts of the world. So these are the elements of Chinese soft power. Buddhism, now coming back to in the Buddhism as a soft power of India. So it was the first rational and reformist religion, and which was non-violent religion. So that was the first expression of the culture and civilization. Then this was very tolerant. It was the middle path, and the concept of enlightenment. They were the very attractive. Nalanda University was found much before there was any university in the world in Europe. So that was the kind of the soft power that we had in the ancient times. Ashoka's Dhamma, that was the soft power that India had. Buddhist people in Southeast Asia and East Asia, so they promoted India's soft power in international politics, or there were the elements of soft power in India's which promoted the idea of India in the international system. There are certain, but now coming back to the theoretical aspect again, that there are certain weaknesses of soft power. Soft power is credible only when it is backed by the hard power. If soft power is not supported by the hard power, the other countries will take it as a sign of weakness. If the soft power is backed by the hard power, as this is done by the countries like United States or France or Germany or United Kingdom, so they are backed by the real hard power in terms of economic power and the military power. So soft power is not an alternative to the hard power. So it's the combination which matters, and they help each other in promoting. Soft power would promote the idea of hard power, and hard power will also promote the idea of soft power. So they have a very reciprocal kind of relationship, and that plays a role in creating what Joseph Nye would call the smart power. And the cultural superpowers, India, as we say that India is a cultural superpower, but cultural superpowers are not enough to win the war. And as you know that India had a huge huge capital of soft power even in 1950s and 60s, but that did not help India win the war against China. So you have to have the hard power in support of the soft power, because you cannot completely bank just on the soft power. So these are some of the weaknesses, and that one has to, when making the policy, one state has to take into this account. What are the threats to Indian soft power? Because we discussed about the Indian soft power, but the certain threats which are damaging the image of India in the international system. One is the growing religious intolerance. As I told you, there are some of the minority institutions were attacked. So any attack on minority is taken as a sign of the weakness of soft power, and that is criticized and that is challenged by the other states. So any attack on Islam in India would be taken as an attack it would be criticized in the Islamic State. Similarly, any attack on Christianity would be criticized by the Christian countries in the West. Rise of majoritarianism, where the minorities are discriminated. So that again is something which is not liked by, which is damaging the image of India in the international system. Now, and then there are certain social divisions. For instance, the Indian society is divided on the caste lines, and there is and Indian society is also where you have a certain group of people who are very rich, but there are people who are completely left out from the system. So there is a poverty, there is a huge unemployment. So that is not giving a very positive image of India. If you see a film like the Slumdog Millionaire, which could have otherwise promoted the Indian culture, or which could have promoted the image of India in the West or United States, but what it projects is that there's a poverty, there's a kind of there's a filth and poverty in India, which is spread in most of the parts of India. So that gives a very negative image of India, and the disparity that we have, the poverty that we have. In fact, poverty of India has become the selling point for the Western media, and also for the Western movies, Western Hollywood films. Many of the films of Hollywood, in the initial years, they projected India as the country of the snake charmers, or the country of the elephant. If you have seen the Indiana Jones series of the Hollywood movies, Indiana Jones, so they projected India as the country of the snake charmer, or the country of the king, and the country where the elephants are there, the country where the cows and the bulls are walking on the street. So that is giving a very negative image of India in the Western countries. So that unless until India also developed in terms of or India kind of bridges the gap which is there between the people who are left out from the mainstream, so that gives a very bad image of India, as the growing religious intolerance and the discrimination of any group, or the social minorities or the linguistic minority. So that creates a very negative image of India in the outside world. So in the recent years, the secular, plural and democratic culture of India has also been has come under criticism, because they argue that the secular fabric of India is now being challenged because of the growing role of religion in Indian politics, the growing role of the caste in Indian politics. So that is again giving a very negative image of India in the eyes of the Western scholars or the Western people. But there are certain criticisms against the soft power. When the people have argued that soft power in itself is not very effective element of power, because what finally matters is hard power. So the people argue, the scholars argue, that one should focus on the hard power rather than the soft power. So one of the criticism is that this the soft power is not very effective. The second is that second kind of criticism which has come is that it's difficult to distinguish between the hard power and the soft power, because if one is so embedded with the other, one is so linked to the other, and it's very difficult to distinguish what is hard power and what is soft power. For instance, the trade and the McDonald's and the expansion of multinational companies, they are sometimes explained as an element of hard power, but they are also promoting the soft power. So the distinction, the distinction, uniqueness of soft power cannot be explained very easily, and how they influence the foreign policy, that again is questioned by the scholars, that the countries which are promoting hard power, whether by design or by inadvertently, they are also promoting the soft power. So distinguishing the hard power with the soft power, that is another difficulty which is faced by the scholars in international politics. Now again, some of the people and this criticism has come primarily from liberal scholar, primarily from the Marxist scholars, that they argue that soft power is associated with globalization and is associated with the neoliberal forms of international system. Well, in the neoliberal system, what you're promoting is basically the idea of capital. So what you promote is capitalism, where the third world countries, or the developing countries, they are seen as the market for the developed states, and they supply the finished products to these third world states, and through that they capture the market, and they capture they capture the resources of the poor states, and the poor states behave like periphery, and the core states which are the major beneficiary of the hard power and the soft power. And people have also criticized that hard power is basically soft power is basically complementing the concept of hard power. And many times the scholars have used the notion of soft power to basically substantiate, or they use it as an alibi or justification for the hard power. They give the example of the U.S. role, for instance, the role of United States in countries like Iraq and Afghanistan, where the U.S. used the justification of promotion of democracy. So promotion of democracy, basically they argued that U.S. wanted to control the oil and gas from Iraq. So as a result, they attacked Iraq, and they sold the idea, they sold the notion of soft power, that they are trying to promote democracy in these states. But the basic idea, the basic notion, the reason they promoted this soft power was to capture the resources of Iraq. And they wanted to, basically it was an idea, it was basically intended to capture the resources of the state for the benefit of the American state. As a result, which finally and that capturing, for that, to justify that as an alibi, they argue that this basically they were trying to promote the democracy. Now, as you can see, that Iraq is neither a democracy nor a stable state. What has happened in Iraq is basically Iraq has become now is under the influence of ISIS, as you know, and that is a very powerful fundamentalist Islamic force, and that has taken control of many parts of Iraq. And Iraq is a very destabilized state now, so there is no chance of democracy coming to that state in near future. Similarly, in Afghanistan, they try to control, or they argued that they will convert the United States and the NATO forces. They argued that they'll convert Afghanistan into a democracy. But finally, what we see in Afghanistan is a completely destabilized state, where Taliban are even now Taliban are very powerful, and Taliban are being supported by a country like Pakistan, and Pakistan is getting aid or the financial support from a country like United States. So there is a very vicious kind of nexus which is there between the American hard power and what they call the soft power. But the idea, my purpose to explain you the concept of soft power is just to make you familiar with the idea of soft power. Then you can develop your own critique, that whether you like the notion of soft power or not. Please understand that soft power is not completely detached from the hard power. And because many of the elements that you see, and many of the elements of soft power, they're basically some kind of extensions of soft power. But there are certain value systems, for instance, the idea of democracy, the idea of, say, some of the philosophy, culture, cuisine, the films. So these are the broader elements of soft power, which cannot be explained just if you explain just the elements of hard power. So while explaining a foreign policy of a country, you can actually think of the two distinctions that you have, hard power and the soft power, that might help you in understand the